Voiceover Coffee Shop, episode number 26.
Welcome to the Voiceover Coffee Shop, where we share our morning with some of the finest names in voiceover. And now, here's your host, voice actor Andrew Morrison.
Hi there, my name is Andrew Morrison, and welcome to the Voiceover Coffee Shop, where we start our day with some of the finest names in voiceover. If you'd like to know more about me, feel free to visit my personal website at www.voicebard.com. In this episode, we have coffee with my dear friend, Chad William Fischer. Chad is a military veteran voice artist who has been trusted by companies from Verizon, MTV, Wish, Chipotle, Petco, and many more. He has also provided voice work for large AAA video games and countless indie titles, such as Sword Legacy Omen, Shadowverse, Battletech, and many more. In this episode, we talk about marketing to video games, using Casting Call Club as a resource, military portrayal in media, and cold call marketing. Hey, Chad, how are you?
Hey, good. Thank you.
Good. So how do you take your coffee?
Classic drip, 2 cream, 2 sugar, French vanilla if you got it.
Fantastic. So how did you get wrapped up in this whole voiceover world?
Yeah, I can pick up at the beginning, I guess.
Awesome.
So as we all say, as a kid, we like doing voices and
Right.
Let's go a little forward more. When I was in high school, I moved across the country, and as a senior in a new high school, they told me I was supposed to have 100 hours of community service a year. So they said randomly, like, hey, you're supposed to graduate in like 4 months, but you need 400 hours of community service. I don't think anybody told you about this. And I'm like, no, they didn't. And so it just so happened they need somebody to do the morning announcements for them. So I was like trying to pull a little game. I was like, if I do the morning announcements, could that be considered my community service? So that gave me part. They kind of wrote off my community service for that. And they kind of said, I only need 100 because they're not going to hold me to that. You know, they're going to not grandfather me in, but give me that exception because I was only there for a year. But I started doing the morning announcements for my high school, and then they started pulling me for baseball games and football games. They tried to do basketball, or they tried to get me to do basketball, but it's games like soccer and hockey and basketball are very fluid. Things just keep happening. It's not something that you can just, I know what fouls are, but the amount of people that come in and out, if you aren't like very familiar with these people and what their names are and how to pronounce them, it's hard to, just go, man, Ted subbed out for 15 coming in, off the Kenosha team, and I'm trying to sit here. And I'm like, I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name. Like it's just, it goes so fast that unless you are very familiar with the names of the people, the different kind of stuff, color commentary, and how that goes for those sports. Those weren't the sports that I normally watch. So I knew football and baseball. So I kept doing that for county sports. And then they ended up picking me up to do I was first doing just our high school in stadium. And then they patched me in for the county and started paying me part-time after work to go do it with the, with all, not just the county, but like 5 different counties, the whole Southeast Wisconsin area. And then I started working on a local radio station that was actually ran by the school. And then after that, I was going to go up to Milwaukee and work at a bigger station. And then, that all kind of things happened. Life happens. I was young and dumb. And I hit a brick wall where I realized if I want to succeed in radio, I need more than just a high school degree, because everybody above me had, masters in broadcasting and, journalism and stuff like that. So I hit that brick wall and I just decided to join the military. So I did 6 years as a submarine missile tech, and that took me out to Seattle area. So I was living over near Olympia, Seattle. And once I was about to get out of the military, I realized I didn't want to re-up. I didn't want to keep doing it. I wanted to go back into something with my voice, some kind of performing art, some kind of something creative. And I started building up my own home studio, buying some stuff. When I say building up my home studio, what I mean is taking a staple gun and stapling comforters to every wall, and just to help reduce the reverb. And I had this little extra room in our house that I was using as my office, and it was all right sounding. And, you know, I made sure that I did as much as I could, reading YouTube articles, checking out the, you know, all the different references and stuff like that. So my first piece of gear was a AT2035 XLR with a pre-Sonus audio box. But I've been thinking of upgrading those, but first my Studio 192 has been very reliable for me for, you know, the 4 years I've been using it. So all I did was just get myself a new 416, because you got to have a 416, you know, when you're doing, for me at least, it was primarily commercial. Most of my stuff is commercial. That's like my day-to-day. That's what I'm actually booking most of the time. After 2020 and COVID and all that and stuff, my video game work started to drastically reduce. So let's talk about the video game stuff. When I was in Seattle, when I was first getting out, all the resources that I was looking for and people I was trying to meet and understand and everything, Seattle has a really big independent video game market, because you've got Amazon and Microsoft and a bunch of other big companies out there with you know, software designers and software engineers, computer engineers, all these kinds of people who they seem to have gotten into this industry to make video games, but they went to where the money was, you know, because they had to. So their full-time day job is working with Microsoft or Microsoft or Amazon or Jesus. Why can't I think of anything besides Microsoft right now? But their babies, what they did on the side was their little, you know, 1, 2, 3-man dev studio where they build their indie games. And there's also a lot of other big companies out there. You got Valve and Bungie and Sucker Punch and, you know, a lot of other big, you know, top studios out there. And they all kind of rub elbows together. You know, they might not work in the same building, but a lot of the independent devs are all working with, or they're all networking and stuff and attending events with all of the bigger industry devs, like the audio guys at Bungie. So I found a group called Seattle Game Audio. There's like a sister version in LA, you know, Los Angeles Game Audio. It's got a whole bunch of great people. That's a great resource. I ended up finding them through this nice lady, Morla Gorondona. She's a voice actress from Destiny. And I linked up with her and we had some chats and stuff. And she ended up referring me to the Seattle Game Audio group. And it's basically just kind of like, it's geared primarily towards game audio engineers, not so much voice actors. The LA version is primarily, you know, it's a good mix in LA. It's like half voiceover, half game dev. But in Seattle, it's primarily game dev. And there was like, I think it was me and maybe one other person I saw over there that was actually doing voiceover. But meeting those people kind of got me an idea of who's looking for what, who's going where they're hiring out. And it was pretty obvious at a certain point, you know, at a certain point of the profession, even though they're in Seattle, it's a post-production studio in LA with LA voice actors they're doing most of these voices, except for these indie games. So the indie games, it was easy enough for me to directly connect with the people that were doing, you know, everything. Because when you got like 3 people in a you know, a dev studio, that's 3 people responsible for, you know, modeling and coding and marketing, directing, and they're doing everything with one hat. So when you come to them and say, hey, I'm a voice actor, I have my own home studio, I can do this and that, here's some of my work, you know, they love it. It's what they need. And there's a lot of bigger indie studios, and they know where they're going, you know, because they've been around, they have experience. But I tend to find there are more people out there looking for you than you know. So when you find them, it's a big relief to them. And of course, there's always that issue of pay. You know, does it pay enough? Is it industry standard? I'm like, if it doesn't have industry standard distribution or industry standard eyes on it, you're not going to get industry standard, you know, rates. And, you know, like there's also that website Casting Call Club. People complain about how low paying it is, but hey, what do you expect from a kid who's making a YouTube animation after high school, you know, on his free time?
Right.
Like, I mean, there are some diamonds in the rough over there at Casting Call Club. Maybe once a month you might find a project that pays over $100 for a character,
like the Fallout mods and stuff like that.
Yeah. Some of those I've done a few of the Fallout mods. Most of that stuff is just because I really like Fallout.
Right.
I'm a really big fan of anything that Bethesda makes. But you know, I love Casting Call Club for one reason, and that was because it was one of the resources that I could find when I was first starting. You know, where can I go to start getting experience? And it's like, okay, I could jump on to Fiverr or voices.com or jump onto any kind of pay to play website, but I don't have enough experience to reliably know who I was, what my voice was, what I could sell best. So it's like, if a new guy goes on voices.com, they're going to be auditioning their butt off. And, you know, if they're lucky, exceptions to the rule, blah, 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 most likely they're not going to book anything, and they're not going to know why. They're not going to know what they're doing is wrong or why it's wrong. They're not going to have any feedback. They're not going to know what it's like to actually book it, schedule it, do a session, be directed, edit your audio, sending files, breaking stuff down, fixing mistakes, learning from mistakes, you know, invoicing at the end. They're not going to get any of that experience that they need from voices.com starting brand new, because they're not going to be able to get past that first door, you know. And once they do, they're still going to have to learn, you know, on the fly, versus Casting Call Club, which is like, I always call it the community theater of internet voiceover.
Right.
Because it's guilt-free. It's like, I'm not going to say responsibility free, but it's like, it's harmless. Like if you make an ass of yourself on accident on a Casting Call Club, it's not going to ruin your career.
Right.
You know? So it's a place that anybody can jump into and have a chance to book something, you know.
So most of the video game stuff that you've done, has it been through direct marketing to those indie dev studios, or has it been through casting calls? Or
well, a few years ago I would have said yes, but now it's been more so through, you know, actual breakdown auditions I get sent, which is, you know, luckily. But it originally, for the first couple of years, it was all through marketing with these indie devs, you know, and then getting referrals of, you know, word of mouth from them. And then there was this, it was all basically, for the first 3 years, it was all direct marketing, because there was so many events in Seattle for indie games. And then there's also, you know, the online portals with VAC and CCC, and then also, you know, some other people that you meet along the way who have their own audition rosters that you get on. They send you stuff, you know. Voices.com, I was on there for a while. I haven't, you know, my subscription lapsed. I'm not going to get into that whole debate. You know, if you don't like it, don't play with it. If it's out of your budget or if it's too low for your rates, then don't take the job. Otherwise, you know, you can sound like me, who talk trash about TikTok, not understanding, you know, how new generations consume their media, or how the next generation is going to feel about their stuff. We can stick to our ways, or we can adapt and change with things. I will say one thing, you know, I've never met somebody in this industry who is as powerful with marketing and advertising as J. Michael Collins. And he's on like most of the platforms, at least. And he's like, if you go to voices.com right now and you go to the raw, like search for members or search for a voice, chances are, no matter what genre you pick, one of the top 10 will be J. Michael Collins. The dude's got a good business. He makes a lot of money, and he's on that website. But I'm damn sure that he does what I just said before. He declines stuff that's out of his rate, you know, and if it is, pass it down to somebody else. We can talk trash about that company all they want, you know, but at the end, it's not going to book you a job.
Right. So on the acting side of it, how does video game acting for you compare to regular animation acting?
Well, I feel like animation has so much more actual acting in it, because for me, 90% of the time when I've booked video games, I mean, for all video games too, it's awesome to have dialogue and narrative dialogue, but the primary chunk of video game work is efforts and grunts and all the random one-liners, move, stuff like that. And it's just, that's fun. That's cool, but it's so much more interesting to actually do a AAA video game, for instance, would have a little bit more, with this, like the Call of Duty games, they have so many cutscenes. You're going to have a lot more, to do with that. But it's harder to book those, of course, because those are going out to LA agents, and you're competing against people like, Nolan North and Troy Baker and freaking so many. Why? I know so many other names right now, but it's those two that just come to mind. You got the competition on that scale is so much greater. That's one place that I have not yet gotten to. I've gotten myself a few AAA games, but that, those are once a year.
So you were talking about how you came from the military and started getting into VO. I know you're a member of the Veterans in Media and Entertainment. What is that organization?
VME is kind of a way for veterans to find when they get out of the military that they have spent 5, 10, 20 years working in one area of the world or one industry, and then realizing things are completely different on this other side. And then now you're competing against people who have also been working all those years. So like for me, for instance, I'm 31 and I'm like, man, I should have done this years ago. I wish I would have started, in high school. Like,
right.
I mean, I was in Virginia Beach where there was like Studio Center or something right over there. I could have started doing stuff with them. I had no idea. But if I would have, I would have a huge leg up on myself from where I am right now. But what VME wants to do is help to bridge that gap, to take the military veterans who had all that time into something completely different. Like for me, I was a missile technician. I was working with hydraulics, pneumatics. I did a complete 180. So like most of the stuff that I did was completely irrelevant, unless, of course, I do a video game and I'm doing something and they're like, hey, what would it sound like with a call sign? Or when, and I'm like, well, we had something called, hey, you, it's me message. So you would say, Andrew, Chad, what's up? Like that's how you could be a tech advisor for a video game sometimes, on advising on the dialogue, or you might have a little bit of a leg up or something like that. Like when I did Division 2, I am 90% sure that having military veteran on my resume, on my submission, was part of the reason why they booked me, because they kind of told me that when I was there, but it's kind of like a little tool to have in the bag to just say, I've got this. It's like somebody who says, oh, I'm also a dancer, or I'm also an influencer. But
so how do you feel the military is represented in video games and things in media?
I will say a lot better, honestly, a lot better than we should be, because Jesus Christ, like Down Periscope was the most accurate submarine movie I've ever seen. It's a crazy, crazy world, when you're stuck with only a few people for however long, the conversations you have, the things that pop in your head, you have to rack your brain with every possible thing you could ever think of. Like I used to spend, what I would do, I spent like 18 hours a day doing circles around these 4 levels of missile tubes, just constantly monitoring and doing maintenance and work on a whole bunch of equipment with nobody else around me, hundreds of feet underwater, just by myself. Like what I used to do is I used to just go past this one guy and I used to say, hey, pick a song. And I would say next until I knew what the song, if I didn't know what the song was. And I would just sing that song for the next like hour. It's a maddening world, and it produces maddening results for people sometimes. And I'm just assuming that this also covers on the ground infantry, tanks, any other branch that's working in smaller spaces away from their family for a long time. But I would say it's in video games, at least, it's pretty badass. Or even movies like Act of Valor, the one that was what I did. That was the platform I was on, where we would deploy SEALs and then give them missile support. And it was cool as hell, but it was boring as hell, primarily most of the time. So those movies really glamorize and make things look a little cooler, and they make us look a little cooler most of the time.
Excuse me. So you had also mentioned to me earlier that that you do a lot of cold calling, and you kind of have specific times that you're reaching out for when you're doing like commercial work or reaching out to certain studios. How do you approach cold calling whenever you're wanting to make a new connection?
Well, so my normal process is, like first I'll do 9 to 11. I will sometimes I'll target it. I'll look for a new place in Texas I haven't looked for, or I will just go to like Google Maps and I'll look for a random city that interests me, anywhere in the country really. And I will pick that city. I will look into that city, see how it's structured, which this is kind of a funny topic. I will actually okay, let's Denver, Colorado. So I see that Denver has a bit of a loop, but there's also some other, a little smaller bureaus around it. It's got Rocky Mountain National Park. It's got all the mountains next to it, Mount Evans, Grays Peak. I'll get kind of an idea of what's around, and Boulder. Like Boulder is just a small suburb of Denver. I never knew that. I'll just do some stuff randomly like this because that'll give me something to talk about. Like let's say I'm talking to somebody in Denver and I mentioned something about Boulder. I can mention Boulder because it practically is Denver. It's right next door, and it'll make me sound a little more familiar with the area. I won't lie to them and tell them I'm in Denver, or I've been there, but I won't tell them that, I know the place like the back of my hand. But I will give them that kind of assurance that I know these areas, or at least I'm willing to look for it, because a lot of times you have regional, descriptions, regional words. So after I've researched it enough, I'll make a call, and it's pretty easy on Google to actually search for a video production company or video production service. And I can see in Denver that I've got, James Drake, Mission 360, Toledo, Triarch, Snowman Films, Wedding Films. No, wedding photographers, wedding, videographers, they're not going to be hiring you. Rocket House Pictures, Noble Bison, Zero Sun, Voca Films. Like there's a bunch of stuff right here that you can find just from searching it. So, you click on the name of the company, you go to their website, get an idea of what kind of stuff they do. You can see most of the time they usually have, like I'm on Bison Production, they have Our Work, and you can see the type of stuff they produce. I can see that they do produce some type of content that would use voiceover. So I know that they would be someone that you can contact. And normally I've never really scripted what I say when I call them. I do kind of think roughly like what I want to say first. Because sometimes you can stumble on words, and I don't want to stumble on words for my first impression when I'm talking to somebody. So when I do call them, it also doesn't hurt to go on a LinkedIn and then look up this company too. Because if you go to LinkedIn and you search for the company, you can see how many people they have. If it's a massive multinational like advertising agency, good luck. You need to know somebody. You need to get in with them in order to do that. And you're not going to get in with them through just a cold call if it's a giant company like that. But if it's like a single production house and there's like maybe 10 to 20, even 50 people working there, then you can have a chance to contact somebody, give them a phone call and say, hi, I'm a full-time voice actor, or I am a professional voice actor. And I was hoping to talk to you guys about how you find voiceover, where you go to look for it. And, it's used in your videos. And, sorry, I saw something that distracted me. I'm like, they produce death metal music videos. That's so cool. But yeah, I just give them a call and just ask them, politely if they use voice actors and how they find them. And I'm normally pretty honest about what I'm doing. I'm just, I'm trying to get some information here to find out where, clients are looking, and if they keep an open roster, and if they allow me to submit myself to them. And most of the time, it's like 75% of the time, at least, they're all pretty, oh yeah, send your stuff over. You send me an email, send your portfolio. But
Gotcha. So what has been like one of your biggest resources in building your voiceover business?
Interesting question. I mean, I want to say my agent, primarily one, Lana Burstein at Shortlist in San Francisco. She's a wonderful person. She met up with me and my wife a couple times. Once actually, 2 different places. Once when I was driving back from LA, moving back to Washington with my wife. She met us out over by the Redwoods. But forming a relationship with her and then sending her stuff, sending her names of people, be like, hey, I got a name for somebody who is, a talent coordinator at this place. I would love for you to do the introduction, something like that. That has been a blessing, especially since she actually cares about it and she actually, goes forward with those. Otherwise, besides my agent, I think the best thing for me was when I realized that my natural voice, my natural, normal, everyday talking voice, with maybe just a little more emphasis, is what sounds the most authentic.
That takes a long time to figure out.
Yeah, it's a lot about confidence, and it's a lot about your own security and your own, getting past your own insecurity. But since I started, back in high school doing the morning announcements, that's all I did was I just used my regular voice. I didn't try to zazz it up a little bit and say, hey, this is your morning announcements, or I didn't do any stuff like that. I get a lot of auditions where they're looking for, let's say it's a Ford commercial and there's the Sam Elliott's in the casting spec. Be like, okay, I could try, but I'm not going to beat out the guy who actually naturally has that deep Ford voice. For me, it's just going to sound fake. So learning, the biggest resource for me, helped me to not waste so much time, because I learned what I book, what I sound like naturally, and what my best reads are. And my best reads are just being myself. There's a little quote that I kind of coined as my unofficial motto, and you are your best impression. So
I like that.
Yeah, it works, because if you try to be somebody else, you're going to get outbooked by that somebody else.
Right. So if you were to write yourself a letter now back to pre-voiceover Chad, what would that letter say?
Oh, man.
Other than start this sooner.
Take that last bonus you got and get professional demos.
So what do you do outside of the booth to kind of recharge your batteries? What does Chad enjoy in life other than voiceover?
Pokemon. Yeah. I've been a big fan of Pokemon for 25 years now. They're coming on the 25th anniversary. When I was a kid, my cousin Steve had a fiance, Chris, who worked at a shop in the mall, and they would get Japanese Pokemon cards. So I first started getting Japanese Pokemon cards before they were released, before the English versions were released in the US. And that was like, everyone thought it was like super cool. I had all the really cool Pokemon cards before they even came out in the English versions. And then the English version came out and I started collecting. And it wasn't until like 7th or 8th grade, my middle school bully stole all my Pokemon cards, and I stopped collecting for like 10, 15 years. And then it was like back in 2016, I just went full on back into it. And yeah, I have 3 kids, and with my oldest, me and her play an hour of Fortnite almost every night together. Me and my middle kid, we do Pokemon, like once a week, we'll open some Pokemon cards. And my littlest, she's only 2, so she's, we just play and hang out. We don't really have anything together yet, but we'll see what that becomes. Because my 12-year-old's a big gamer. She's a big gamer, but she plays a lot of games. I wouldn't say she's a very diverse gamer, but it's mostly just Roblox, Minecraft, and Fortnite, as most younger kids are. But other than that, it's spending time in hanging out with my family.
So where can people find you?
Oh man. Most of the stuff I'm having is being rebranded for CBX Media is my new my new name for everything that I'm using: Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, is CBX Media. And also on YouTube, CBX Pokemon is my my new Pokemon channel with my middle kid.
Oh, cool.
And we've been doing Pokemon unboxings and booster pack openings and stuff like that. And it's been a lot of fun. And also Chatterbox VO, which is my actual professional website, which is drastically in need of rework.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem.
I really hope you enjoyed listening to Chad enlighten us on veterans in media and entertainment, as well as giving us a unique perspective when it comes to marketing and auditions in the video game world. If you would like to know more about Chad, you can visit his website at www.chatterboxvo.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Voiceover Coffee Shop. For more information on guests, new episodes, and more, be sure to visit www.vocoffeeshop.com.